These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Hello everybody and welcome back to a brand new live stream. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel as well. And we currently have a lot to talk about, but we do have some good news out of the state of Pennsylvania that we did not have last stream, and that is Donald Trump has taken the lead in Pennsylvania on the Real Clear Politics average, especially as you have a couple polls out of Atlas Intel, a couple polls from Trafalgar as well, which, by the way, they've been very cautious this cycle seemingly, but they did release a poll with Trump with a 2 to 3 percentage point lead. It deserves to be tossed in the aggregate if you're going to be tossing a Harris plus 5, poll for morning compost in that aggregate. So let's get to 100 likes so we can turn on the face cam, and we will get to the super chats as well. We have a lot of people pouring in. We only have 400 people right now. We're probably going to get over 1,000 at some point. And we will be taking calls later on during the stream as well. And we'll get to the calls eventually. But it is good to be back on stream when we're 37 days out. We're 37 days away from the presidential election. That is, a month and a week, essentially. We're 5 weeks away. And this is the home stretch. This is something that people need to understand, is that we need all hands on deck. Now is the time not to persuade. I mean, you can persuade people if they're on the fence. If you know people on the fence, I recommend persuading them. But this is not going to be won via persuasion past this point. This is an election that is going to be won in the trenches. It's going to be won by turnout. That's what's going to dictate the winner of this election. If Donald Trump is able to get 4 years, an additional 4 years in the White House, it's turnout, not persuasion. We understand how persuasion is. We understand how we've had 4 years. People have had the time to kind of take in what's going on. Biden's unpopular. Donald Trump is more popular than ever in an election year. And historically, you would say, well, that would mean that Donald Trump is the favorite, especially given what happened last election cycle, where you have a very, very close election, despite a very tumultuous time in the country, where Democrats are able to get all these, people out to vote, whether it's COVID being the number one issue. And the number two issue was actually BLM. So COVID and BLM were more pressing issues than the economy, if you combine them. And the economy was kind of not what it was the year before, where Donald Trump was en route to a landslide victory. So you're seeing what's going on based off of those three factors. You'd say, yeah, Donald Trump is, all it takes is a little bit of a shift back in certain places in the Rust Belt. He's going to be able to win, especially given the Sun Belt polling. It seems like Arizona, the Harris campaign is losing confidence there. They're losing confidence in Pennsylvania. They're losing confidence all over the place. And the Atlas Intel drop, while people can critique the methodology or they can critique, certain crosstabs, what they can look at, the polls, and what they can see is the fact that they were accurate in the past, and they also show polling that's in line with the reported internal numbers that Democrats even publicly have claimed. You have Alyssa Slotkin. Maybe it's a fundraising tactic. Maybe that's what it is. But she didn't say anything about her polling numbers looking bleak, which they might. But she said something about the Harris numbers. The numbers they're getting for Harris look weak in a place like Michigan. And that's understandable. She didn't say our numbers as in, her campaign. If she said that, it's one thing. Ted Cruz has been doing that with his fundraising, texts, whatever. They all do that. But when she mentions Harris, she's somebody that's running for Senate. She's concerned about Kamala Harris and what she's doing. That's not good. You can't say that's a good thing for Democrats in the state of Michigan. You can't say it is. They've been bleeding support. You have half the electorate that's white working class, and you're replacing Biden from 2020 with Kamala Harris. We don't have to talk about current Biden. He's completely irrelevant. They threw him out. He's done for. We could stop talking about him. But what we will be talking about that's important is the fact that you have this individual that's replaced him that has just zero ties to this region, zero appeal to these demographics, chooses like a minstrel show running mate that is probably going to be eviscerated by somebody with an IQ about 50 points higher than his not too long from now. You know, we have a little ways to go for sure until we get those until we get that to that debate. But one thing I will say is that the Pennsylvania numbers, regardless of what the sources are, they're looking much better for Trump than they were in 2020. And that's exactly what matters because, you know, if Trump gets 1% more, a little bit more than 1% compared to 2020, he's going to win Pennsylvania. And when you have the polls that were so off base, all saying tie, what does it tell you? It tells you that a lot of these polls probably are just hurting their polls. They're afraid to show a Trump lead. Some polls might not have the courage to show a Harris lead. That's kind of what's going on in Pennsylvania. But you talk about the state and you talk about the shifts within the state. Harris is not going to have that appeal to Western Pennsylvania, let alone Eastern Pennsylvania, that Joe Biden had. And that's kind of what's disastrous. They're not getting the mail-in numbers anywhere close to 2020, which is expected because you're not in a pandemic, but they're not really any different than a midterm year in 2022. So you have that high propensity Democrat voter. They're going to show up. They're going to vote. Harris is going to get 2.5 plus million votes in the state of Pennsylvania. But again, people are naive. People are a bit naive to think that 2020 was some great year for Republicans or it was an atrocious year for Democrats. They capitalized on digital targeting. They capitalized on mail-in voting. And now they're not really having either one of those two things working in their favor. And even the midterms that people want to point to, you didn't even have higher turnout than the 2018 midterms, even among those voters. And yeah, of course, Biden's in the White House. I get that. But still, if these are like super voters who are now going to vote for the Democrat no matter what, they're going to be anti-Trump. You didn't even get high enough turnout with them to really convince anybody that they're really in a great position, especially in these three states. You didn't get it. And obviously, you don't have Trump on the ballot. You can't make a one-to-one comparison. You have to look at 2020 to 2024. Just like I said before 2020, you have to look at 2016 to 2020. You can't look at 2018. You're going to get burned that way regardless of what side you're on. You know, Georgia, for example, if you're like, oh, well, it's a blue wave, Republicans won Georgia, it's not a state we need to be concerned about. Yeah, it can blindside you in certain instances, and we kind of see that. So you're looking at the shifts. But Pennsylvania, I wanted to look at it, just look at the aggregate here, because everything that I've said would happen and other people have said would happen a month ago have largely come true. Donald Trump was, he was down in every swing state or almost every swing state at the time. It was after the DNC. I said it's, again, response bias. She wasn't getting a DNC bump. She already had that lead in these places, in a lot of these polls that have been inaccurate and understate Donald Trump's support. So when it comes down to a place like Pennsylvania, I said, okay, the sugar high will wear off. The Sun Belt, some of these states that have a little bit more accurate polling are going to fall in line first. And then Pennsylvania, which is more accurate in terms of its polling compared to the other two states in the Rust Belt. And then, Michigan, Wisconsin, it's going to be a dead heat in those states. A lot of people said that, including Mark Halperin, who is not particularly, from what I understand, the biggest fan of Donald Trump, but he did predict the Biden dropout verbatim. And that's exactly what's happened. Trump has regained the lead in every Sunbelt state with the bizarre exception of Nevada, which was his strongest state, and now Harris is polling ahead. I don't know what exactly it is there, but the Morning Compost poll is doing a lot of carrying, and then Atlas Intel had some weird results out of a couple states, including North Carolina, which, by the way, I expect to be hurricane related, and also the education sample seemed a little bit too college educated than you would like to have in a state like North Carolina. Doesn't have to be perfect because there's other things that people weigh for, but when you have a sample where your target is like 51% college educated in a state where the electorate in 2020 was about 36 to 38%, that's not exactly going to be good enough. That's not going to be good enough in a state like North Carolina, which Democrats somehow think they're magically going to win, despite even in these left-moving counties, Republicans stop the bleeding in a lot of these voter registration data dumps that we've had, and it's getting troublesome for Democrats. They had a lead of around 400-some thousand. That lead has been cut to like 150,000 raw voters. It's not looking too good for them in the state of North Carolina. As things stand right now, it's not really looking all that good. So we'll have to see down the stretch, but you like what you see out of Pennsylvania, North Carolina in the polls. And again, what is the administration doing for the hurricane? That's crucial. You know, we could have this debate. Is it going to displace people to the point where they're not going to be able to vote? Or is the horrendous response from this administration going to play a role and drive up Republican turnout and cause undecided voters in these places to break in favor of Donald Trump? I really feel like you could make the argument that it's going to end up doing the latter. I really do. Because when this all settles down, Donald Trump will be there tomorrow. He'll be on the ground in Georgia. I don't know if he's going up to, North Carolina for it, but he's going to Georgia. He's going to be helping out for the hurricane. What exactly is Kamala Harris doing? She's nowhere to be found. They're sheltering her away. Her running mate, is he going to be able to stop the bleeding? We call him Tampon Tim, but I don't think this tampon is going to really stop this bleeding that she's having with this campaign. I don't see it as things stand, because J.D. Vance, whether people, love the guy, like the guy, or iffy on the guy, or even don't like the guy personally, he's objectively a very, very smart guy who's become very skilled at debating within the media and become that bulldog, like attack dog type of guy. So when Donald Trump's running mate, Vance, he's going to step on the debate stage with Kamala Harris's running mate, it's not going to be the best look unless Tim Walz severely outruns the expectations, which the media has been hyping this guy up to be like this. Oh, he's so skilled, he's so relatable. And then Vance, they say he's weird, this, that, and the other thing. That's been the narrative. That's what's driving the favorable ratings. I think that you're going to have the favorable gap close. And it is true, it's probably not going to be a very watched event. You might have like 40 to 50 million viewers on cable and probably, 20 more million streaming. Usually the VP debates get around, 10 million or so less than the presidential debates get. But this one, it's going to be watched. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. And I really think that Vance is going to win the debate. By how much is the question. I think he's, I'd rather hedge my bets with him, regardless of whatever the media polls say afterwards, trying to spin it. Oh, well, actually, Vance had a shaky performance, they'll say, because, I don't know, they'll try to pick it apart. But in reality, you'll say, oh, he was defending Trump bad, Vance lost the debate. There's nothing you can do to win a debate as a Republican anymore unless they want the other person gone, like Joe Biden, which they wanted him out of the way, and they finally got him out of the way. And you saw that with those post-debate polls. But in reality, is this VP debate going to move the needle much besides like maybe softening people's perception on J.D. Vance or making people like him if he does well? I don't exactly know if it's really going to move the needle. The one thing I say Vance can do, because this is the closing argument, there's not going to be another presidential debate after this. Vance can capitalize on the momentum that Donald Trump currently has in the current polling, in the current race, the fact that he's going out there, he's closing well, as he usually does. Nobody's better down the stretch in October than Donald Trump when it comes to campaign rallies, when it comes to sharpening the messaging at the right time. Donald Trump, he's done it twice. It was much more effective the first time than the second time, but this time when he's already in a prime position for victory, he's going to go out there, he's going to likely end up, as things stand today, it's not over, but he's likely going to win the election. And Vance can help him get there, maybe, among some of these voters. Maybe they don't like Trump's tone, but they like his policies, maybe some of those suburban voters that people talk about. Well, Vance is that mouthpiece because he can articulate Trumpism well. He understands both sides of the equation. He grew up poor. He grew up in, Kentucky and Ohio, very, white working class family. It was dysfunctional, and he managed to go to Yale Law School and graduate in 2 years from Ohio State, summa cum laude. So you see all this happen in his life. He understands both sides. He's seen it. He's worked in Silicon Valley. He's worked at creating jobs in Ohio. So when it comes to things like that, it's like, yeah, he's somebody that can kind of broadcast the message to an audience that may not be as receptive if Donald Trump is doing it. They say Trump's not really the best debater. They don't like the way he debates these one-on-one debates. But you look at somebody like Vance, the people that say that, they're going to really struggle to claim that Vance's debate style would not be well, because Vance is kind of somebody, even when Mike Pence was the running mate, they would always say, wow, Pence really did well in this debate. He did well, the same crowd, even the crowd on the right. So you kind of see that unfold in the 2016-2020 elections. Vance this time around, he's going to probably do that. But the VP debates rarely move the needle. They rarely do. It would take something drastic, and it's going to be good entertainment. It's going to be fun to watch. But is this going to be like a make or break for the race? Probably not. I mean, that's just how the debates usually go, unless it's something like the first Biden debate, where it was a little bit of a setup of sorts, and they were able to pressure him to get out of the race, and they did so successfully. So you have the polling, you have the new developments. Harris has no momentum. She needs something to change the race in her course. You could even argue if she ever had the race, going to her favor. So what exactly is she going to get? What's she going to get happen over the next 37 days? Is it this email dump that they apparently have on Trump? They already leaked the Vance document. It was the biggest nothing burger I've seen in my life. Just a regular Oppo research file with all public information in it. So what do they have on Donald Trump that's damning? And even if they have something that is, you're going to basically collude. Ironically, they use the term collusion. They're going to broadcast materials that were allegedly hacked by the Iranian government. Whether people think it's them or not, it's besides the point. That's what the narrative currently is. So you're going to team up with Iran and leak all this data that they've gotten in a Hail Mary attempt to damage the reputation of Donald Trump, which again, Trump's reputation can't be damaged. He's reached a point where they've hit him with everything possible they could for 9 years, and he's more popular than ever. They're going to be deluded into thinking that's going to be enough to carry their candidate over the finish line. Will it be enough? I don't quite see it. But one thing I will say about North Carolina is you have the Atlas Intel poll, which is kind of strange, to put it lightly. And then you also have Marist and some of these other pollsters like the New York Times. Their final polls in some cases in North Carolina were Biden +6 in 2020. And now Donald Trump is either tied in those polls or leads those polls. Common knowledge would have you believe that Donald Trump is probably in a good position in the state of North Carolina, but we'll have to see. Obviously, there's 7 swing states in the Big 7. They're all up for grabs. Harris can't win Florida. Harris can't win Texas. Donald Trump can't win New York, although it's going to be closer. The numbers he would have to do are just, I would be astounded if it's even like within 5, but if he got it within 10, that would be miraculous. But you look at some of these states, Trump isn't winning California, he's not winning Oregon, he's not winning Washington, probably not winning a state like Minnesota or even Virginia. Now I'm intrigued by the early data in Virginia, but I'm not at a point where, this state should be high priority when you still got Wisconsin to deal with, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. And even though all metrics do point to, you could take your foot off the gas and you still could have a solid chance of coasting to victory, it doesn't really work that way in effect. I mean, we need to make sure people are voting. We need to make sure that we make it a landslide, at least in these 7 states. I mean, if that's the case, you're also likely going to be able to peel off a couple Senate seats that Democrats, they originally hoped for. Pennsylvania, Bob Casey, he can't lose. Well, now, how many polls have we seen where that race is a dead heat? I mean, we've seen a very large amount of polling that shows Pennsylvania Senate race to either be a tie, and I believe it's more in line with that than some of the polls that have Casey up by 8, just because of the fact that people that go to vote, a lot of these lower propensity voters that vote for Donald Trump, John Fetterman talks about this, he's right about it when he says people in Butler County and in parts of that area, Trump does have a special place for them, especially after the assassination attempt. When people get out and vote in those counties, when people get out and vote across the state, if they don't vote in midterm years, those people typically just vote for Trump. They vote for the Republican Senate candidate. McCormick has done a good enough job during his campaign to win enough of those voters over in the state to the point where, Casey, he's very overrated. He's been there for a very long time. Usually the novelty wears off. The old Casey, Democrats or whatever, those voters, they're all in the past, and a lot of them, eventually passed away. You talk about when Bob Casey Sr. was in the Senate, you're talking back in the 30 years ago. Your average young voter who's going to vote for the first time that likes Trump in Pennsylvania, they're not going to be voting for Bob Casey, but for his dad. They don't even know who his dad is. And the question is, do enough of those voters get out and vote? Yeah, that's the real question. That's what we need to focus on, is getting them out to vote so they vote, so we win. And by the way, guys, if you want to check out my merch store at shop.redeaglepolitics.com, you can get this mug with the Trump design on the front, the iconic design, and you can get the quote on the back, the inspirational quote right here. And on top of it, you can get the shirt that I have on, the Red Eagle shirt with the alternative logo, because the regular logo doesn't print well on the shirt, but the alternative logo does look pretty awesome on the shirt, and you guys can check that out. Shop.redeaglepolitics.com. Just check out the store. You don't even have to purchase anything. We've got a few designs people might be interested in. There's a little something for everybody there. But in terms of the super chats, we want to get to super chats, and then we want to get to calls, because we are going to be doing another live town hall. We promise that we do one call-in show every stream, and if you guys want to call in, you have to join the Discord, and to join the Discord, you have to become a website member, not a channel member on YouTube. That's not the website. The website members and those in the higher tiers do get priority. So we will get to the super chats. Brian M., thank you for becoming a member. Antonis Andriatis says, will you be live on election night, November 5th, 2024? Absolutely. I wouldn't be anywhere else but right here that night. It's going to be incredible. Johnny Heartdog says, I think Trump is more likely to flip Wisconsin than Pennsylvania. Yeah, you can make that case. I think that they're probably going to both vote pretty similarly, just based on demography and trends in each state. I mean, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, they voted equally in 2016. Then Pennsylvania voted to the left of Wisconsin in 2020. Could that have been like a Biden effect? It's possible. I've said it's possible. Also, there's a higher suburban population, a higher college-educated white population in Pennsylvania as well, and a higher minority population as a whole. So it's not like they're completely identical states, and then there's different cultural differences there, but we'll see. John Bean says, if Trump loses, what's our course of plan then? Well, we'll have to deal with it when the time comes. It's entirely possible. A Trump victory is far from guaranteed. We do not want to make the mistake that we made during the midterms and say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's a red wave. Like, yeah, the historical metrics favor Trump even more than they favored Republicans in the midterms. The problem is that you can't bank on that, and there's other things you have to consider. Look at the full scope of the situation. And Donald Trump, he is the favorite. You can't really make a case that he's not if you analyze all the data. The question is he going to get that turnout needed? Are the Democrats, how many votes are they banking? So far, there's no data points that really look good for them compared to 2020. You could say, well, the mail-in requests being down is because COVID's in the rearview mirror, but still, they're not impressive anywhere for them. They're really bad for them in North Carolina. They're really bad for them in Georgia. They're down significantly in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, but not as badly in those states. But we'll see. James Says, I was in the space you were in earlier, and based on what Rufus and a few neocons said, it kind of got me scared. Are they accurate? Well, a lot of these people don't understand turnout dynamics, and that's what I kept trying to say during the space. People think that college-educated whites are going to move left off a cliff because, I don't know, they have a friend who used to sell constitutions. That's not the median voter, by the way, who's upset about certain things Trump said that were leaked in an interview. Now, that person does exist, and they probably, again, they're not voting for Harris, but they're just not voting, and maybe they'll come home, and some of these people will come home before the election, as many do during election season. Typically, Republicans come home late anyways, but I don't think that there's really any worry based off of what a lot of these people are saying. Some of the people in that space I know were trolls as well. I don't know if you were there after I left, but I know that there were a couple that did come in that are known trolls. I'm not going to say which accounts they were, but what I will say regarding North Carolina is they're like, oh, well, research triangle, Trump can't win the state. It's like, do you remember how bad things were in 2020? No, you don't. These people largely were wrong about the primary, and then they want to feel vindicated so they could say, well, if you nominated our guy, then they would have won, which is not true, by the way, but that's how these people operate. Their candidate would not even get, 65 million votes against Kamala Harris. And if you think that the media apparatus wouldn't turn that person into a demon that would have ridiculously low favorables, well, you're wrong, because already if you look at the favorable ratings of somebody like DeSantis, they were worse than Trump's on net. Nikki Haley's were worse than Trump's on net. This notion that they'd be able to go out there and win a general election, it's because they want to feel vindicated because they think Trump is the unique problem. In fact, the problem is the GOP brand is the problem. Donald Trump is doing his best to change that. Now, the problem does lie in, these midterm years, these off years. They are the low propensity party now. We need to build up our apparatus to make sure these people vote. But there's been more of that than last time. Look at how much Elon Musk and his pack are spending on, the ground game in certain places. Look at how much they're outsourcing, and it's cost effective to these organizations. They're out there every day, doing and putting the work in. They do exist, and they've been doing it in terms of an emphasis. There's a lot more of an emphasis on it now than there really ever has been, and it's a good thing that they're doing that and putting the emphasis. Where was the emphasis in the ground game in 2020? There was really no emphasis in the ground game in 2020. Most people were contacted by the Biden campaign. Very few people reached contact from the Donald Trump campaign. Biden and the staff were very good at digital targeting. They've kind of abandoned digital targeting, and now they're trying to go straight to, we'll have volunteers, but what is that really amounting to? We'll have to find out. But even in their ground game was so good because they bested Republicans in the midterms. But again, they got how many total votes nationwide in the midterms and in the generic House vote? 50 million. That's not a lot of votes. Republicans just left a lot on the table in a lot of these key states, and they lost the battle of persuasion in the Rust Belt, especially when you have people that don't like Whitmer, but they think Dixon, they see the commercials about abortion for Tudor Dixon, and they're like, I can't vote for this person. They're too radical. But Donald Trump doesn't do that. Donald Trump doesn't kind of, play that abortion card when he's running for office because he's smart. He understands it's a third rail issue. It's an issue that's not really been one of his highest priorities personally as well. But still, when he gets in office, he delivers the biggest victory for the pro-life movement. And some of those people have decided to spit in the face of the candidate that delivered them the victory that they've been working tirelessly and relentlessly for, because he doesn't want to, take a position on abortion that's like third rail electoral cancer because he wants to win. And then the same people will complain about electability. Yeah, they're kind of in a bubble. But in terms of the narrative, it's like I said, you got to compare election cycle to election cycle, presidential years. If you start bringing up the midterms to discredit Trump's chances, you lose the argument before it begins, because you're succumbing to what I like to call the midterm brain rot, where you let it impact every other single worldview of politics. And the one thing you should take away is Republicans are the lower propensity party now, and we need more people voting, and we need to chase those voters so we can make sure we can win. That part is true, but this notion of, it's over, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. But Johnny Hartdog says Trump's simplest path is Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, but his likeliest path is Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, Wisconsin. Well, this is why you don't campaign in just 3 states. Now, yeah, I think that that's the easiest path versus the likeliest path. But just focusing on, I mean, Pennsylvania is a higher priority than Wisconsin because you don't need Wisconsin to win. But this notion that, Democrats have room to grow in the WOW counties, they really think they have more than they do, because these are very red counties for a reason, because not all suburbs are demographically the same. There's a reason why Washington County, Wisconsin might even get a little bit redder this election cycle, because it's a very working class suburban county. But counties in Northern Virginia that are of a very high rate of educational attainment, and you have a high number of minorities that have moved there over the past couple decades, why it's getting bluer. Now, some of those minority groups might help some of those counties stagnate if they move right a little bit, but we'll have to see. A lot of it comes down to turnout. So far in Virginia, Democrats are not showing up. Now, it is early. We're not done yet. But even using the turnout models that some of these people have used that have gotten every election right in Virginia over the past 4 years, what are they saying? They're saying, yeah, Virginia's within 5 right now. And obviously it's a moving target, and I don't think it's going to flip. I don't think it's high priority. But yeah, get out and vote if you're in Virginia. We need to make things as close as possible. Vote regardless of what state you're in. It doesn't matter. We want to win the popular vote. We would love the bragging rights. But yeah, none of the doomers take into account those basic metrics. And while it is true, things like turnout, ground game money, they matter a lot in midterm or off-year elections. And we see that compared, Florida to a state like Michigan, where you have a competent Democrat Party and a competent Republican Party versus an incompetent Republican Party and an incompetent Democrat Party. You see the shifts there. But presidential elections, it's true, we do need to increase voter engagement. I'm not saying we don't need to do that, but based off of the turnout, we're going to have more people voting than we would an election like that, which is good for Donald Trump by every stretch of the term, especially because Republicans, it's not like they completely, got destroyed even in a lot of these places in the midterms. So if turnout increases and the Trump-only base comes out more, he's probably going to do better. We'll have to see. Johnny Hartdog, we did that one. Patrick Cullen says, what's up, Rep? It's America First. Zoomer from X. Always good to see a late night stream from you. I'll be uploading my first election videos tomorrow. Well, good to hear. Thank you for the super chat. Royal Doyle says, looking forward to your final 2 monthly predictions. Yeah, well, we're going to be doing one October 1st, and then we're going to be doing one probably mid-October. Maybe we will do a third one. I don't know if we'll do one like every 10 days. But no, it's true. The final prediction is November 4th. Now, I'll probably do the final down ballot prediction the day before. I might do it in the same video, Senate, House, governors. It'd probably be like 30 some minutes long for sure. But yeah, we'll be doing our second to last Senate prediction. Maybe we'll do a second Senate prediction depending on how the month goes. But we'll be doing our House prediction. We have not done a House prediction in a long time. We will be doing our House prediction not tomorrow, but we'll be doing it on like November or October like 2nd or 3rd, one of those days. But Nick Schmidt says, how do pollsters determine likely voters? And this is another thing, because there are low propensity voters who are likely going to vote, and pollsters will screen them out. They'll be like, oh, this person never voted before, but they're voting for Trump. We're just going to screen them out. That's what they have been doing in the past, and that's what they've continued to do. And those new voters this cycle, every poll shows Donald Trump winning decisively with voters who never voted before, or never voted in 2020 at least. Those are the people that are going to decide this election. But also think of it, the 2020 electorate. If you ask the people who voted in 2020, would you vote for Trump or Harris? You're not going to get Harris winning the popular vote by more than Biden. If anything, Trump is going to narrow it significantly. And then you add the new voters, which are likely going to be in Trump's favor by how much we could debate how much. But Trump has got, he's winning those voters in the polls by like an average of 10 points. Even if that's 10% of the upcoming electorate, that's huge. That's like 1% on net past that point. So you're talking about Harris by 1 final popular vote electorate. That's kind of in line with New York Times, Quinnipiac, some of these pollsters that have missed in the past, but nationally they claim they've improved. And I think obviously New York Times methodology, they have improved since 2020. They're not missing by 10 points in the Rust Belt, but are they missing a little bit in the Rust Belt still? Yes, they are. Don't let some of these polls in Wisconsin demoralize you. Oh, Harris is up by 1. That's a horrible poll for Harris. I'm not saying you're going to see a 6-point polling error or 7-point polling error again, but do I think the polls are going to underestimate Trump in Michigan and Wisconsin? Yes, and there's a chance Harris doesn't lead either state by Election Day, depending on what happens between now and then, especially with their struggles in Michigan, where the Democrat constituency, you're losing a good chunk of it. You don't have high energy and enthusiasm with black voters. Some of them, mainly young black men in Detroit, will be, maybe not in ridiculous numbers, but shifting to Trump. Every vote that shifts to Trump is a net of 2. And are you going to get that COVID level turnout in like Oakland County or some of these other places? Even the poll we saw out of Kent shows Trump turning a corner. The white working class numbers, that's the number 1 electoral priority for the Republicans there. And Donald Trump, he went to Warren. He had a town hall in Warren. Great event. Whoever's telling him to do the town halls, they should be given a raise, because it's kind of like a rally. It's like an interactive rally. He doesn't have to speak the entire time. You could bring in another politician to host it with him. It's just a good it's just a good concept. He's running it is a competent campaign. I've really refused to understand why people magically somehow think that 2020 was a great campaign when it was not a good campaign. It had many flaws to it. And if you go back, you could listen to my videos. I critiqued those flaws, and I'll still critique those flaws. But the problem is they don't exist. They don't persist in the current Trump. What was the message? What was the agenda? Something about, the Democrat cities are going crazy. Like that was supposed to energize. And he still got 11 million more votes. He still got that many, despite Republicans not really using the vote by mail system. There's more mail-in requests arguably going to be now in some states than there were back then for Republicans. So, you're seeing what's going on there. Democrats, they have more of an unreliable share of voters they're going to need to get out. And Republicans, it's true, we got to get our voter base out too. But, the Trump support, the enthusiasm really is stronger than it's ever been from what I can tell. Just seeing everything, especially in the Rust Belt. The Sun Belt, it's kind of hard to tell. But, there's not a ridiculous amount of Trump signage in Texas, but there are some, and there's more than there were Abbott signs in the midterms. I didn't see a single Abbott sign. I saw a few, obviously there was a lot of enthusiasm that Democrats had for Beta 2018 and 2022, and he did not perform well at all, despite abortion being a top state issue in the midterms. But we'll see. We never really know what the polling error is going to be, but it comes down to turnout. Trump, if you have the right electorate, Trump wins invariably. He wins decisively. The question is, it'll be a close race. Every vote counts. We need to chase ballots. We have 1,900 people in chat. We need these people. If every person got 2 other people, I think just start with 2. Eventually we can get up there and get 5. But if every person got 2 people to vote or registered and make sure that they vote, tell them, do me a favor. I'd like for you to show up November 5th or before then and vote for Donald Trump. And if they do it, that's huge. That's 2 extra votes. That's right here in the chat. We'd be at 5,000 total. We go from, or we'd be adding around 4,000 new voters that way. That's decisive. It does everything. And that's kind of what the position that we're in. It's not, I could go on these long-winded rants about Kamala Harris, and I'm still going to do that. Of course, we're going to talk about certain things that happen between now and then. But we're past the point of, I'm going to persuade people what's going on, which we're going to talk a little bit about certain things, maybe like occasionally. I still want to do a video debunking some of the nonsense just because it's, maybe if it gets a wide audience, it could change a few minds. But in terms of getting people out to vote, that is priority one. Everything else is secondary. Secondary is persuasion to turn out, which is, maybe somebody's on the fence. You tell them, hey, look at this, inflation out of control, find their top issue, find what, makes them, motivated to have a stance and a position in politics. And, maybe they don't like Trump's tone. They're like, I don't like Harris. I don't like Trump's tone. Be like, you're not voting for a one person, you're not voting for a king, you're voting for an administration. And Trump had an administration. You had a strong economy. It's gone away. You had a strong border. It's gone away. You need Donald Trump back in the White House to make that happen. And obviously you kind of see the contrast there. And obviously persuasion in general is lower priority now than it was, a few months ago, which we've been doing that and we'll continue to do that. But we need to make sure that we get people out to vote. That's the main point. So Johnny Heartdog says, I'm also hoping Vance wipes the floor with Tampon Tim. Yeah, that'd be a good debate to watch. It'll be fun. I'm sure the left will claim Vance loses for some reason. They will. They did that with Pence. Pence beat Kamala in that debate. I'm not a fan of his, but he won the debate objectively. Samuel J. says, what's the story in Arizona with the voter roll glitch? Hobbs conveniently missed this for almost 4 years. Well, the good news from what I know about it is that a lot of the voters that they would remove, if they removed them, would actually be Republicans between the age of 45 and 64. So, again, they just have not officially provided proof of citizenship, whatever. They are registered to vote to an extent. They probably will be voting for, a lot of that demographic will be voting for Trump, but there's these people, they need to be reconfirmed. That's what it is. So again, this was raised by the Democrat Secretary of State, and then you have the Republican recorder who is not really, he's really an anti-Trump guy. He was the one that was saying, maybe we should remove these people. But then the Supreme Court of the state, which is Republican, they said, no, we're going to keep these people on. So you kind of see how it goes there. Now, James says, do we even need a polling miss to win? No, we don't. I'll show you on the map here. Because if you have Wisconsin, or we'll leave Wisconsin blue, but you give Trump the states he leads in, 262. Now it's 281. 281 would get Donald Trump the White House easily. So again, if you apply the polling miss to 2020, if you use 538's polling miss, Donald Trump sweeps the board in the swing states. If you use RCP's, Nevada would go narrowly in the Democrat column, but all the other states would be more Republican, or Pennsylvania would be the same. But still, now Trump leads in Pennsylvania. So you look at the big 7 swing states, you see Donald Trump already. The mail-in requests are redder and they're down from 2020. You see the polls are far better than they were in 2016 or 2020. We have to close. That's all we have to do. That's the main point. We have to make sure we win this thing. And the only way to do that is to get people out and voting. Moose for 10 says, it's Trump's fault. No money is going to victims. Yeah, exactly. These people will never take responsibility for anything. That they won't provide the money. They're a part of the current leadership. It's the current administration. They're blaming Trump for all their problems. Why are they blaming Donald Trump for all their problems? Again, that's all that these people do. They never take responsibility. They blame Trump for the border crisis. Donald Trump had the executive actions in place that stopped the border from turning into a crisis with the Remain in Mexico, Title 42, all these things. And then it became out of hand because Harris and Biden for the longest time, even back in 2019, they were saying these people are welcome, come to the border, come to the border. And what did they do? They listened. They came to the border, and then Biden got rid of Remain in Mexico. He got rid of Title 42. He tried to pass an amnesty bill that they called bipartisan, and Donald Trump said, don't vote for this bill, which it wouldn't have passed anyways, and then they blamed Trump for the entire border crisis. It's the dumbest gaslighting I've ever seen. You don't need a bill to fix the problem, but Donald Trump and the Republicans, they supported a bill of the strongest bill in history, H.R. 2. They never passed it through because they don't care about border security. They care about amnesty. That bill wouldn't have even gone into effect unless, you had 10 million every 4 years worth of illegals that were crossed. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous for the things that had to go into play there. So no, it was a horrendous bill. It would have done nothing. And Biden enacted a lot of the bill via executive action. So why did you even need a bill? Why? You didn't need a bill. But what can I say? Ash K2 says there may be hidden Harris voters in Pennsylvania. Most are scared to put Harris signs. Vance was kicked out of a Pittsburgh restaurant. Well, see, that's the thing. You're not going to have people in rural Pennsylvania putting out Harris signs, even though she'll get some votes there. But on the other hand, Trump people in the suburbs of, inner suburbs of Pittsburgh, I'm sure there's probably more Harris signs than Trump signs, or about 50-50 in those places. So it's not about a secret voters by yard sign. If you do yard sign analysis, you're going to get burned. Doesn't matter what side you're on. Now, I will say this about the Trump yard signs. He's got a big presence with those to the point where it's not like people are forgetting an election's happening. So I will say that. Now, in terms of J.D. Vance being kicked out of a Pittsburgh restaurant, you're getting kicked out of a restaurant, a very liberal area. They didn't want to have him in. It's the same restaurant that hosted Kamala Harris, like it was, she was family. They hosted her like she was family. But J.D. Vance, he tries to go in. They're like, oh, we don't want campaign events here. That's what happened. And now the restaurant's forced to apologize for it. It is what it is. XJ Cherokee Bear says Jeff Flake is a pervert. I don't know about those allegations, but he's very Lincoln Project-esque. I'll leave it at that. Mike Oxard says we can't afford a 2000-style victory. We need a mandate. The libs should be given no grounds to cry election F-word. We want the popular vote. Yeah, that's the thing. If it's 500 votes that separate these two candidates, we probably know which way the election's going to go. That's not me telling people that they should be afraid of shenanigans. You get the other side of that argument where they're like, what's the point? Those people, they deserve to be re-educated properly and understand the safeguards that have been put in play. This is a much fairer election, a much more secure election based off of that alone. You have less mail flying around all over the place. You have lawsuits that the GOP has won, voter ID laws in certain states, clearing the rolls in certain states. They can't do enough of that stuff to really make the impact. They can't do it. They just can't. Now, I'm not saying there's not a little bit here and there, but this whole illegals are coming in. They're all going to be voting. Let's say 1 million illegals actually found a way to vote. Here's the problem. If you're going to sit idle and not get more legal Trump-supporting citizens to vote, then who's at fault there? It's the fault of the people complaining just as much as it is anything else. Now, I will say that that's largely a myth. There's more people on the voter rolls now that are citizens who are ineligible than who are illegal and ineligible. We've seen that. The whole Social Security thing, it's been countlessly debunked. Ken Paxton debunked it. The math is not there. And if illegals were registering to vote, you would see it in the registration data, and you're not seeing it in the registration data. You're seeing the opposite in every swing state. Now, it's not everything. It doesn't mean it's not going to be enough to gain 300,000 voters in Pennsylvania just because you've netted 300,000 votes in Pennsylvania. That's not going to do it. That's not going to be enough because some of those people are, ancestral Democrats. They switch their party registration. They become Republican. But you look at a state like Arizona, which has actually turned a corner. I think it's very difficult to see Kamala Harris prevail in a state like Arizona, especially given what we're dealing with the border. And it's right there. And it is impacting Phoenix, and it is impacting disproportionately, working class whites, union workers, and Hispanic voters themselves. It's a pressing issue, and it's not helping Democrats the way they hoped with that demographic. It could backfire immensely if they lose and Trump deports them all. Their voter base that they brought in, it's not going to pan out too well for them if Donald Trump wins. But I agree. Steve Dow for 20 says, the people saying polls have corrected themselves ask based on what evidence, then present the counter evidence, start with the national trend in party registration favoring Republicans, or also the Gallup indicator. That is the number one most accurate indicator for the popular vote above any other poll. Whether if it was 2012 when they had Dems up by 4 when Obama won by 4, or whether if it was the D+3 2016 that gave us a Hillary by 2 in the popular vote, or the Biden plus 4.5 when they had it at D+5 in 2020. Like that indicator, the aggregate of it, that is the most important historical metric. And what does it have it at? R+3. Now, do I think Trump is going to win the popular vote by 3? I'd be very surprised. I'd be happy, believe me. But I think that he can win the popular vote. I think it'd be neck and neck if he does it. I think it's, it depends on turnout. It really just does. So we got to keep going. But it does depend on turnout in a lot of these places. Johnny Hart Dog says, Vance has the balls to call out the moderators. Pity that Trump didn't. Yeah, but Trump not like battling the moderators. Like it's kind of like a back and forth kind of thing. He was measured. He was focused. That's what he was doing. He was not busy getting in a spat. Like he got in the spat with Chris Wallace in 2020, and it kind of things went off the rails. And you could make a case that Chris Wallace was even more biased back then. Recency bias will kick in for ABC. Given who was moderating the debate at ABC, it's pretty obvious that, we got the debate we expected. I wasn't like taken aback by how disgustingly, outwardly biased the moderators were just because I expected it. I actually expected it to be a little bit worse than that, but it was bad. It was bad. I'm not saying it wasn't. Dean Cream Between says, rep and depressed Ginger Dual election night stream. I'm going to do a solo stream. If people want to do their own streams, they're more than welcome to do their own streams, but I'm going to do my own solo election night stream. John Waffle H2P has already voted for Trump along with some other people. That's great. And find other people and get them to vote too. I mean, this is not election day. It's election season. We need people voting at the highest rates they possibly can vote in. That's what's going to make the polling accurate. It's what's going to make the polling undershoot Donald Trump in some of these states. And I think there's a lot of potential. I think based on just natural swings from 2020 among certain demographics, like, yeah, Harris is with that electorate that showed up in 2020, she would lose Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. She, might even lose Georgia. She definitely would lose Arizona, and she would lose North Carolina by more than Biden lost it by. We understand that. Maybe even Nevada would flip. So you see that shift from the electorate that voted. The electorate that didn't vote, they need to show up because when they do, it's going to be Trump. And in terms of the drop-off, there's another question. Are Trump 2020 voters dropping off more so than Biden 2020 voters are dropping off? Given COVID and the issues that were at hand, I would probably be inclined to say that those low-prop Biden voters dropping off is more likely than the low-prop Trump voters because they voted for Donald Trump once. It's not like the enthusiasm level isn't high because it's very high, and things are a lot better for Trump in 2020, especially within the campaign. I mean, people that like to critique everything, they're not able to view it objectively. They're not. They're just not. The 2020 Trump campaign left a lot on the table. This Trump campaign is leaving no stone unturned. It just comes down to turnout. I Am Charles says, if they're desperate, the October surprise will be Joe resigning, Kamala becomes president to take the seat. Well, the thing is, if she becomes president, then what's the point of having people get out and vote for the first female president? If she's already president, she also owns the record of the administration. So I get the theory. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they want people to think that Kamala Harris is as separated from Joe Biden as she possibly could be. I really do. That's what they want. So I don't think that I get that argument. I get that super chat a lot. I just disagree. Johnny Hartdog said Trump had the balls. It just did not occur to him to do so. Yeah, I feel like he was in the zone. And that's why I was in the zone too, and I liked the debate, and some people didn't like the debate. But, I rewatched the highlights. People are going to think he did better. E. Smith says over under Walz desperately brings up the Haitians, dog, and cats comment 3 times. Well, I think it'd probably have to bring it up once because, look, Vance, that's his issue. It's Ohio, immigration, that's the expertise. Vance is the one that brought the issue up to Trump, and these are claims that were made by people who are residents of Springfield. Whether people want to say that there's not enough evidence to stake that claim, the bottom line is, why are 20,000 Haitian migrants being dumped on this small town under this administration? And why is Kamala Harris giving them temporary not citizenship, but status? That is not something that is a popular thing to do. That's a very unpopular thing to do, and it's poisonous to Democrats regarding the issue of immigration. And if they want to bring that up and talk about immigration, their weakest issue, hey, be my guest. If Tim Walz does that thinking he's going to get some sort of own or like try to do this faux moral outrage, Vance is going to just shut it down. He's going to shut him down. That's what's going to happen. Apex Caliber says Virginia looks great each day with lower propensity voters for Trump. Well, that's something that is encouraging. Because people say, well, the lower propensity voters aren't going to vote, but they're voting in Virginia, and when they're voting the model party, which is not perfect, but when it's 4-1, 5-1, and the people that are doing this have been accurate at this in the past, doing it in the past 4 years, typically it's like, yeah, that's not good news for Democrats. It's not. I refuse to see how that's the case. When you have these people voting for the first time ever, we've seen the polls, they're voting for Trump, and that data is fully real. And when you have it, yeah, that's great. Cam H is what people don't realize is that she has the Gerald Ford problem. It might be like 76 on steroids. Also, what is your opinion on Sean Spicer and Rufus? Well, those are two very different people. But in terms of Gerald Ford in 1976, Kamala Harris is directly a part of this administration. She doesn't have a record of her own. She hasn't tried to differentiate. Well, she has tried to differentiate herself, but it's not exactly the same level of differentiation when she's trying to tout accomplishments, but say, I'm not Biden, I'm a new generation of leadership, but you're the same exact thing. You have the same people around you. You're not going to change a thing in the administration other than who's running it and who the VP is. The VP gets a promotion. You get some whack job in there as the number 2, replacing the whack job that becomes president. So Michigan Nationalist said, oh wait, hold up. We have the opinion on Sean Spicer and Rufus. We talk about Rufus from Twitter. He's a character. He's a really interesting guy. I'll say that. He's got a lot of moving parts to him. Do I have an opinion? I think that he's a clown. He acts more like a clown than I think he actually is, because he'll come off more reasonable if you're talking to him one-on-one than some of his absurd posts that are like borderline bait. As for Sean Spicer, I really don't have much of an opinion. He was the first press secretary for Trump. I don't really have much of an opinion on him. Michigan Nationalist says we will flip Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Montana in the Senate, not sold on Lake or Brown. That is a lot of flips. It's possible. Look, I think that if Trump wins those states, you could see all 3 go. I'm not saying you can't. And maybe some of these candidates will surprise. Maybe McCormick outruns Trump in some places. Maybe Mike Rogers outruns Trump. Is it the likeliest course of action? We'll see. But yeah, it's entirely possible, because they say the same thing back in 2016. These people, Feingold's got, he's going to beat Johnson. They said Toomey is screwed. And they said, other candidates were going to be in tight races like in North Carolina. And then you saw Burr win by a ridiculous margin. J3 Plays, thank you for becoming a member. Johnny Heartdog says, I think if Trump focuses on Michigan, then Wisconsin and Pennsylvania will fall into place. Well, it's true that if you're focusing on the issues to those voters, but you got to hit all 3 of those states for sure. They're all 3 of them are winnable. All 3. J3 Plays says, I'm a little concerned about the voting impacts the hurricane will have in Georgia and North Carolina. Yeah, that's not something to gloss over. We'll see what happens. We'll see how many people get displaced. We'll see what's going on in that region. But it is 100% true. Now, Hurricane Sandy was a lot closer to the election, and it was a lot more destructive in 2012. It did have some voting impacts in terms of turnout, although it did move to the left in some places because of Obama, and his response was favorably viewed to Sandy, whereas Romney was just nowhere to be found. This time around, Biden is kind of, again, another botched response where he's like, oh, I've given all I can. Yeah, that's not going to cut it to these people when you have statements like that. And then Harris is not even going to North Carolina. I don't know what she's doing, or not going to Georgia. So I think politically speaking, you could say this might help Trump, but the turnout question, is Trump going to get the turnout necessary in the region that's impacted by this sort of thing? You would hope. We have a long way to go, so we'll see. We'll play it by ear. I can't say that I'd have those states going blue right now like some people do, but I think that, yes, Donald Trump, he needs to make sure that those voters are able to show up and turn out to the polling place. Let's see. Apex Caliber says, Whatley for RNC shows Ronna McRomney sabotaged us. Of course. Absolutely. Well, we're not done yet, but it is true. Ronna Romney was awful. The RNC was in shambles, and it's still recovering. We're not done yet, but still. Apex Caliber says, if Trump wins Virginia, does Hunkow ride his coattails? Well, if he wins Virginia, it's possible. Now, is he going to win Virginia? I think it's doubtful. I think it's very doubtful. Die for Oil says, do you think Pennsylvania will be called on election night? It depends on the margin. If Trump is going to win the state by like over 2, I think the answer is yes, and vice versa. I don't see Harris winning it by over 2. I think Trump wins it between 1 and 2. But I think we're going to have an idea. Mike Oxard says Virginia's tilt DD plus 1. I mean, that's a bullish prediction. That's a very bullish prediction. Ash K2 says in 2021 Georgia Senate runoff, Republicans were supposed to win, but on election day, Democrats came out. Well, no, Republicans were supposed to get their asses kicked, and they did. I mean, they weren't expected to win those races. The polls showed Democrats winning those seats by several points. Everybody thought that you would see either a Democrat sweep or they would take at least one of those 2 Senate seats. Yeah, I mean, that was a tough election, and nobody thought Herschel Walker would win that runoff either. So, but yeah, I mean, those times were tumultuous for sure. Apex Caliber says November 1st is my birthday. Talk about pressure. Well, take people to the polling place on your birthday. Make sure you get out and vote, either on your birthday or before or after. Sam Madsen says, how badly would DeSantis have lost to Harris? Well, I don't think DeSantis would win a single state in the Rust Belt. I don't think DeSantis would win. You could even make the case he wouldn't even win some of these Sun Belt states based on the demography shifts, what's going on. He'd do worse with minority voters than Donald Trump. It wouldn't even be close in a lot of these places. He just would be a little bit of an awkward candidate. The weird label that they try to stick to J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, that would just stick like glue to somebody like DeSantis because he comes off as awkward. He's not able to relate. Now, somebody like a Glenn Youngkin, he's more establishment for sure, but he can relate to people. He's a skilled politician. I think somebody like that could maybe win a general election, but somebody like a Ron DeSantis, Florida, he can do well in Florida. You're a statewide politician, incumbent governor winning re-election by a lot in a red-moving state. Yeah, that's, one thing. People like the governor there, but then when you go to the national level, you're not going to exactly compete. You're going to get upstaged in the debates by Vivek and Nikki Haley. And Vivek, nobody even knew who he was the year before. So you're seeing massive shifts in people's perception of him, which is why I'd never understand the DeSimp people and the way they view this guy as like, oh, he would win this election. Like, you just need to just say I'm wrong and move on. It's not that difficult. He would not win. Haley would have severe base issues. She would not win. She got 20% in the primary, and half of those voters are Biden 2020 voters. That's not a recipe for electoral success. When a lot of those voters that even backed her in the primary in our timeline would have backed Biden or Harris, and the third party vote share would be high. It would be a disaster for Republicans across the board. Ragdoll MMA says, live near Nova, hate to doom, but Virginia probably won't flip. Yeah, I agree with you. But I think it will be closer, and I'm pretty sure you agree with that. But I think it's a state that is a lost cause for national Republicans to focus on. For example, Donald Trump doesn't need to do 5 rallies in Virginia between now and Election Day. I don't even know if he needs to do one. If he does one, he does one, but, we'll see. Mr. Jimmy says, is Helena Biden's Katrina, and will it help Trump? Well, 2 things, and we touched base on this. I don't think it's Katrina bad, but it's not good, and it doesn't make Biden look good, and it doesn't make Harris look good in the eye of the public perception. Now, North Carolina and Georgia, if those voters are displaced and are largely Republican, could it have a negative impact on Trump? Absolutely. We have to say it the way it is. I don't see evidence that it's going to be drastic at this point. That's not me saying everything's fine, but those states, I think Trump is going to win North Carolina. There's early voting, a big window in North Carolina. We'll see. We'll look at it when we're there. We'll look at it when we get there. We're not there yet. Jet Jones says Curtis Yarvin says he'll lose because, look, Curtis Yarvin supported Biden, I believe, so I don't really take what he has to say seriously. Walk Talk 21 says if the NFL was like politics, would the Detroit Lions be competent at running a campaign? Well, I think it's very similar to the Trump campaign because you gut an apparatus, you fix the problem, you run a campaign and a party how it should be run, and then you start to see the results. Now, that was a really quick turnaround we saw in the competence of the GOP. Usually you think it'd take a while. The question is, will it pay off in November? We're not there yet. We'll get there. We'll see. But no, it was a disgrace what Ronna Romney did to the party, gutted the apparatus, watered down the messaging, hurt Trump, sabotaged Trump in the process. It's not good. Colby says, I personally worked for 20 campaigns over a year in a swing state. It was appalling. 24, 100% feels more strategic. Issues done at the state of the USA are clear. So, yeah, I mean, we have a lot of people that believe that the vibes are in Trump's favor. Now, the vibes are not definitive, but what can I say? Zoink says, will the Dems try a faithless elector coup? It's not going to work. They tried that in 2016 as well. William Runyon says, hi, Red Eagle. Love the content better than LTE. Trump took the lead again on RCP. Let's go Trump. In Pennsylvania, he took the lead, which means he takes the lead in enough states to win. And I've been sounding the alarm on Pennsylvania for a while, whether it's the Polish-American vote, the Irish-American vote, just all these demographics. Biden had these connections, whether you want to say they were embellished or not, to northeastern Pennsylvania, that region. And it did include the Philly suburbs because, that's the media market where all those ads ran for how many years in Delaware. Biden this, Biden that. They were familiar with Biden. They're not familiar with Harris. Harris is, somebody who's flip-flop, San Francisco liberal. That doesn't appeal to those voters. Donald Trump has a record. If these people are voting, a lot of them are struggling financially right now. They don't like what's going on at the border. That's their number one issue. Trump is soft enough on abortion to the point where they can stomach him on the social front. So, yeah, I mean, Pennsylvania should be a prime pickup. I never understand the Democrat smugness about the state of Pennsylvania. I never understand it. Anybody who uses the midterms as an example of anything, they should be just laughed out of the room. Same thing goes for reverse coattails. They should be laughed out of the room. That's it. So James says, how long do you anticipate your election night stream to be? When do you expect to start the stream? And when do you think you'll conclude the stream? We're going to start at probably 5. I'm Central Time, so we'll probably start it at 4:30. And then we'll probably go all the way until it will be probably 12 hours. It could be longer than that. Jersey Wrath, thank you for the 5. Nick A says, never wanted a person to be so wrong as I want Lichtman to be wrong. What's your thoughts on the Lichtman-Nate Silver beef? I hate to side with Nate Plastic, but he's not wrong. Lichtman he's a fraud. He's changed his predictions. How many times has he changed his predictions, and what quantifies the keys? And then if you say anything, against Lichtman, he'll be like, what's your expertise? I have my expertise. It's this bizarre, inflated ego sort of thing. He'll never admit he was wrong in 2000. He said, it's the popular vote. And then he thought Trump would lose the Electoral College. If you listen to his interviews in 2016, he's like, the only swing state he could get is Ohio. Well, that means he's not winning the election, obviously. And now it's like, it's actually the Electoral College. And then he goes full election denialism about 2000, which in a fair count, Bush prevailed in Florida. I don't like the guy, but he did. Now, I will say, the butterfly ballot screwed over Gore, but it kind of proves that in an election model, you can't predict everything. You can't. So why is his model infallible based off of that? No, it's not. And clearly it was wrong in 2016 as well, if you want to say it was right in 2000 based off the popular vote. But Hamster Eater 96 says, do you think Chad Derek Anderson can beat obese soy boy Yevgeny Vinman in Virginia 7th? P.S. The website link to the Discord is broken. Really? Okay. We got to fix that. And we also got to take the calls. How long have we been going on for? We'll take a few of them. We don't have to. I'll try to take as many as I can, but we're finishing the super chats here. Real UGB says North Carolina voted the right of Virginia by 9 in 16 and 12 in 2020. If Virginia's close, does it mean Trump's up by at least 5 in North Carolina? I mean, certain states can move in different directions, but I will say that, no, if he gets Virginia within like 7, he's not losing North Carolina. There is a gradient. Demographics matter, across the country. This whole, this state's got a better turnout apparatus. That can work in a midterm year, but it's less indicative in a presidential year. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to turn out voters at the highest rate possible in every state. We should, but this whole, Virginia's GOP is just super competent, but North Carolina's GOP is super competent as well, and they've defortified as well since 2020, which Trump already even won the state in 2020. So you do the math. On that one. Jersey Wrath is not sure if you saw, but Michigan Muslim mayors said Kamala doesn't have the numbers, and she's going to get completely decimated in Dearborn. Even if she even if she gets like 30% of the vote there, that's not good. She's going to get absolutely decimated in Hamtramck. Even among black Muslims, she's only polling at 50%. That's not good. That is not a good number. And there's a sizable Muslim population in Pennsylvania as well, around Philadelphia. It's not as big and consequential as Michigan, but it just shows that there's a lot that she's lost with certain demographics. And it's not like, this voting block that's like 1% of the electorate is moving right by 10 points. It's no, they're going from, D plus 70 to, maybe even Republican. She's in third place. Kamala's going to go from 70% of the vote in, the Muslim Michigan area to probably like 15. Now, a lot of that is going to go third party, but that does boost Trump in a county like Wayne County. The margin Harris is going to get, she might not even get 60% of the vote in Wayne County, depending on, the black turnout level we're going to see this cycle, which is probably going to be lower. We'll see. Ryan for 10 says Kamala's woefully underperforming in Biden in 2020 and he barely won. If you're within 3 points of Trump, you're losing. How could anyone believe she's winning? Because people genuinely just have PTSD. They don't trust the Republican Party apparatus. They are rooting for Trump's downfall, whether they, claim to support him over Harris or not. Ethan Farrell says, any explanation why Polymarket's moving left? Well, it moved right a little bit. It was moving left for a while. And sometimes people buy shares and they sell them. In terms of momentum, the fact that not a lot's changed, it's 50-50. I wouldn't use that as a discouraging point. Chris Collins for 20 says Trump wins all the swing states except Michigan, which is 50-50. Confident in the rest. Would love to see more early voting data. We'll get there, especially this month. In a couple weeks, we're going to have a lot more. Libertarian Spirit says, what do you think of the compact theory of Constitution? Minimize federal government, move it all to the states, make it a confederation. I don't think that that's all that viable. But I don't think I'm to a point where I'm like, every state should have more power because the federal government can't be saved or the blue states will outnumber. We're not there yet. Hopefully we don't get to that point. Ethan Farrell, 2028 Republican favorite to be the nominee. The favorite would be Vance. Mace's Trump 2024. Blaze says in a fair election, Trump wins. But if there's... Look, I've said this before. There might be some stuff in some incidences, but you're not going to have 2020 wide-scale stuff when you don't have enough mail-in ballots in circulation and when the RNC is actually taking election integrity seriously under the new... and they're getting a lot of court victories in the process. Mr. Jimmy says, thoughts on Walz flipping off a Trump supporter? I mean, the guy's just a clown. He's not serious. It just kind of proves everything that we know to be true about Walz. Anti-Piracy League says, is early data in Virginia more likely representative of a national trend of high Trump-based turnout or paper It's not about paper ballots. It has nothing to do with paper ballots. We know who's voting, period. Therefore, people are showing up and voting, whether they be voting on a paper ballot or voting on a machine or the votes being counted. The votes haven't been even counted yet. It has nothing to do with paper ballots. It has nothing to do with it because these are not necessarily results, and they're just models. Now, they probably will pan out to a certain degree, but they're not perfect. Let's see here. Dickie Spass says Trump may win in Arizona, but Lake is going to lose the Senate by at least 10 points. Yeah, that's not going to happen. There's no way she loses by 10. That's not going to... There's no way. Maybe you could say 5 if it's a bad night, but not 10. Colby says, can you elaborate with the math on GOP registration spikes simultaneously with 18 to 24 Dem spikes in recent weeks? Well, 18 to 24 would be a demographic that'd be more Democrat, but I haven't heard anything about that. In fact, I've seen the opposite in Pennsylvania, where the younger voting bloc demographic is moving to the right in new registrations. In terms of like recent weeks, it's probably just colleges. That's what's driving that. And you have more college students registering to vote. They may lean a little bit to the left depending on where it is. But Chris Collins says Trump took 2020 for granted, didn't put maximum effort in. He's all in and has a fantastic team in place. This is the best run Republican campaign by a Republican since Bush in 2004. Was that all that great? I mean, I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. But, I mean, Bush lost a lot of popularity past the point of, the 3-year mark around 9/11. He was not at his high approval rating. He couldn't milk it any further. Colby says, give percent odds for a scenario where Harris wins 270 to 268 with the Harris faithless elector. Probably less than 1. I don't think you're going to get 270 to 268, and I don't think you get a faithless elector. They're banned basically, but in a lot of states, they're removable in a lot of states, and on top of that, they vet these people. But yeah, we got to make sure it's not too close for comfort, for sure. So we want to take a couple calls as well. We don't want to leave the calls hanging. We're going to take a couple calls. Questions. If anybody has a question about the 2024 election, we have 4 people in chat. We can do this. We could do the speed run. But any questions that people have about the election, concerns, questions, concerns, or if somebody likes to share like a point of confidence, they're more than welcome to do that too. Now, we will be going to, and by the way, we did get people joining the server, the Discord server, but apparently it seems like a lot of these people were, okay, that might have been some sort of a attempted and failed raid of sorts, so that doesn't quite matter. So we did, that's why the link is not working, so we're going to update that for the next stream. We're going to change the link on the site. So in terms of the calls, we're going to take them now. We'll go live, alphabetical order. We're going to ASNS, AS&S, how's it going tonight? What's your question?
It's going well. So I got two questions for you. Sorry, a question and a statement.
Okay.
So, statement first. I don't believe that Trump will win New York, no matter what he says. But I think that he needs to play that line as many times as possible in order to turn out his voting base and support all the down ballot races. Now, my question is, do we think that he's doing the same thing in Virginia, or is it really teetering that much? Because I've seen a bunch of conflicting polls, and I don't really know which poll providers to even trust anymore just because of that.
Yeah, I mean, even the polls that have Trump behind significantly in Virginia, we get like Emerson with a Trump by or Harris by 8. That's still a 2-point improvement. And then there's a lot of other in-state pollsters there that are showing the race within 5. Now, I don't know if it's going to be within 5. I agree with everything you said about, say we're going to win New York, vote in New York. You need to really ramp up turnout among Republicans in New York State just because you need those down ballot races. And I think he's going to get a lot of them for sure. And that could save the House. As for Virginia, I think that obviously he has a much more realistic chance just based on like mathematics.
Of course, yeah.
But is it feasible? I don't really see Virginia flipping. If it's within 5, it's a huge moral victory for Republicans, and we'll see. We'll see how it comes out on election night. Anyways, that was your statement and question, I take it?
Yep, that was it. Thanks a lot.
All right, no problem. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to, let's see. Let's see who we got here. We've got, we're going to go to Humanoid Boy. Humanoid Boy, you're on the air. What's your question?
Hi, Rep. Nice to talk to you. This is great. So I was curious about your thoughts on the House Representatives, and how it would go. Because right now on Polymarket, Democrats have a 63% chance. It's a little worrying. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
No, I get it, and I think it's largely because of the generic ballot polls, and they're underrunning Trump. And they did the same thing the previous election cycle, but at the end of the day, not only did the polls underestimate Trump, they also underestimated the pull that Donald Trump would have on down-ballot Republicans. And I think you're seeing the same thing in a lot of these Senate races. I think if Trump wins Pennsylvania by more than 1, I think, yes, McCormick very well could be the senator. So I actually think the House is probably very likely to go the direction the presidency does. But if anything, it's easier in terms of a pathway in these toss-up races for Republicans to hold the House regardless than it is for the Democrats to recapture the House, because they really they did really well in a lot of these swing areas in 2020 or 2022 without Trump on the ballot. But if Trump comes back on the ballot in a place like, I don't know, these rural Michigan districts or some of these districts in places like Pennsylvania, they're going to struggle. And in terms of these races in like New York State, yeah, Trump polling much better probably guarantees that Republicans are going to do much better in a lot of those seats down ballot. And, even if Trump falls short in the election, I think the House probably, assuming it's a close election, Republicans have the upper hand. Could I see him lose it? Yeah, but I'd say that's a decent bet to take. I'm not, giving betting advice, but if I was gonna bet one way or the other, I probably would hedge my bets on the Republicans, just because that seems a little too lofty.
For 2022, it seemed like New York, like the House seats there, really went Republican a lot based on Zeldin. Zeldin really helped with a lot of Republican turnout in the state in 2022.
Yes.
I don't know if I think Trump could have the same amount of pull. I don't know if as much, to a lot of New Yorkers. But I don't know. We could see.
Well, if the polls are anywhere near accurate in New York State, and it's within 15, which I think the final margin for Trump could very well end up like the Senate race, where, again, Chuck Schumer, he was a juggernaut for years and years and years. He only beat like this unknown MAGA guy by 14, and you could say that Zeldin might have had some pull, but either way, New York has kind of really been hit by a lot of the issues that are plaguing the nation under Biden. And Donald Trump going to New York, energizing turnout. Yeah, I think the House in New York, I think that a lot of those seats, we might lose one or two. I'm not saying Republicans aren't losing any seats. I'm sure they will. I think the one seat in Oregon, that's going to be really tough to hold on to. But New York, it's very possible that Republicans could make gains, and they will translate down ballot. They absolutely will.
New York City could probably, because it trended in 2020 to the Republicans a lot. It probably will again. I think it will.
He could hit 30. I would not be surprised if he broke 30% in New York City. I know Zeldin did that. Zeldin's margins upstate. I think Trump improves a lot upstate. I don't think it's going to be by enough to even get the state within 10, but 30% in New York City proper, and then like 55% on Long Island. Could he do that? I think he absolutely could do that. He could cut that margin in half. Absolutely.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for joining. We have two more callers. We'll go to Nick. Nick, you are on the air. What's your question?
Howdy. So I was actually kind of curious about, and I know this isn't the most fun topic, but I call it the backup plan. Now, I know obviously Trump doesn't plan on anything bad happening to him, but it's something that's been on my mind, and I'm sure it's been on a lot of other people's mind. And as someone who may have more insight into what Trump's backup plan would be, do you have any idea what would happen if something were to happen to Trump and if something were to happen to Vance? Because to what I understand, if something were to happen to Trump, Vance is still top of the ticket because the ballots are already out there in the various states. But if something were to then happen to Vance just because of the sheer hate, what would we do from there?
It'd be a disaster. I don't. It's not to insult your question, but it's a question that I really don't want to answer because I don't want to think about it. I'm sure a lot of people don't want to think about it, but there is that reality there, and a lot of people are worried, and it's true. It's not. I'm not as worried about shenanigans in the election, given what we've seen, as much as I am worried about safety. Because if the first thing were a problem, the second thing probably wouldn't be needed to be talked about nearly as much. But no, it's absolutely true that Donald Trump, they're out for him. There's a lot of different people, and if those two things happened, what would happen? I think the Republican Party post-election would have to do a nomination process. I don't think I'd just be a disaster for the country, is what it would be. I'll say that much, but that's pretty much all I could tell you about that.
I understand. It's certainly not something anyone wants to talk about. And I didn't know if it's something where the Supreme Court would step in and say, hey, we got to delay this or something because we have all kinds of interference. I don't even know what kind of power they would have in a situation like this, but obviously something the government would probably want to step in and say, hey, too much is happening here. That maybe they would try to find some way to balance things out. I don't know how all that would work out, but thanks for taking my question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for calling in. We have one more. We'll go to Real Texan, the last caller of the night. Real Texan, you're on the air. What's your question?
What's going on? So my big concern with the election right now is on Nevada, because that seems like the one state of the big seven that Harris is most likely to win. And I have a theory for why she's doing decently, and I think part of it may actually be her stealing the no tax on tips proposal. I think maybe there's some undecideds. My theory is that I think there's some dem-leaning undecideds that maybe they were open to Trump because of that proposal, but then when Harris came out in support of it, they just came home. So what do you think about that?
Well, the main thing is that Donald Trump was already winning the state of Nevada before he unleashed that proposal in the polling. Now, how that impacted things for Harris, I thought it was an optics failure to co-opt it. Do I think it might have made some Democrats in that, Clark County area, maybe they're, going to just buy it? Those are probably people that were likely coming home anyways, to be honest. As for the polling, yeah, I mean, those are the polls there. Now, the polls were overestimating Trump in 2016 there. It's true. They were actually, in Real Clear Politics, they nailed the margin in 2020. 538's margin undershot him by like 3 or 4 points in Nevada as well. So, I mean, that has to be taken into account. I still think that Trump probably has the upper hand there. I think it's going to be close, but you look at the party registration shift data, you look at some of the defortification measures as well there, and obviously the Trump, being the first one, and also now it's no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security for seniors. There's so many policy proposals that he's proposed that also kind of tie into that. It's kind of he's made it his brand. I don't know. Obviously, Harris is kind of forced to I guess co-opt it because she knows if she's doing that, though, it tells me that her numbers in Nevada are pretty bad, at least internally, because they were just ignoring it for the longest time. So I don't know. I think Nevada, it just comes down to Clark County. Can Trump get that county within 6 percentage points? If Kamala's weaknesses with Hispanics are as bad as they appear to be, and as her weakness with the white working class voter are as bad as it appears to be, yeah, I mean, the voters missed by the polls that are likely going to come out for a presidential year largely are these working class voters. And if they do, Donald Trump probably does win the state of Nevada. So we'll see. But that's my take on Nevada.
Yeah, and I think, around this point in 2020, Biden was doing like the best he was doing in Nevada. I think he was polling the best he ever had in the state, and then it narrowed up from there. So we'll see the same thing happen here, which if that's the case, then Trump's going to win Nevada. But
yeah, and the Atlas Intel poll, just another one of their schizophrenic polling dumps. But even in 2016, Hillary Clinton led by 5.2% on October 23rd in the state, and obviously it narrowed, and Trump managed to somehow have the lead because of one outlier poll from CNN using a polling firm that they don't even use anymore. The other polls, if you aggregated those, would have been pretty much on the mark. So, we'll have to see about Nevada. I'm not giving up any faith in Nevada, but I will say it's not a consequential state. It's probably not going to determine the path to 270, any more than like New Hampshire, if that state was closer, which it doesn't appear to be this cycle. But anyways,
do you think Harris may also have some kind of geographical advantage since she is from California?
Well, I think it would hurt because a lot of people have moved from California to Nevada to get away from California. And I don't think she even has a home state advantage. When they did the exit polling in 2020, her numbers were worse than Biden's in California. I don't know if it's a geographical thing. Like, is it true that, she has more in common with like Democrats in that part of the country? Yes, but that's not necessarily a good thing for the other demographics, and especially it's not a good thing for the Midwest. But I don't think that her replacing Biden really altered much there. I don't think she's really doing that much better with the Hispanics, maybe in the polling, but who knows? The polls go back and forth with the subgroups and the crosstabs, and it's the way it goes.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what Ralston thinks eventually.
Yep, definitely, and we'll see which way he goes. But if he predicts it within 1 point, either way, that's still fair game because he has underestimated Trump by about 1 point both cycles. I don't know. He does tend to have a pulse on the winners in the state, though. I'll give him credit where due there. But anyways, appreciate the call, Real Texan. Thanks for joining the show. But we are done with calls for the night. And we have a couple more super chats, and then we'll wrap things up. Old School says Trafalgar was wrong about the shy Trump voter not responding to the polls. In reality, Trump voters don't respond to pollsters since they're overworked. Well, they're also harder to reach by poll. If it's overworking or if it's something else, there's many reasons for it. There are many reasons for why those pollsters miss voters. But it's not that they're shy. They're not really that shy. A lot of the polls are not conducted by phone anymore, so it doesn't really matter. You're filling out a survey that somebody texts to you, or they're targeted online for some reason. Like, it's not entirely the way people think of, the pollster calls somebody. They still do that, but even the pollsters that call voters tend to mix in other modes to widen the scope of the people that they're reaching, which is why we've done that. And by the way, we have a GoFundMe for SoCal Strategies, and we are going to be raising more money for more polls because they are expensive. And if you guys would like to donate to the GoFundMe, I'd recommend it. Even $5 helps. If everybody gave $5 in chat, we would be able to fund every single poll the entire cycle. But I will post the link a couple times for you guys if you guys want to donate to the GoFundMe. And we will wrap things up. It's been a great show. We will be live after the debate between JD Vance and Tampon Tim Walz on Tuesday night. So be there. We'll recap it. We'll go from there. And I'll see you guys in a video tomorrow. So like the stream, subscribe before you guys leave, and check out the GoFundMe. Even $5 helps out a lot so we can conduct more polls, which means more videos and more data that we have to analyze. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle, out.